is data nonetheless. Keep in mind the bar for
Hello
data
and
is actually
welcome
pretty
back to
low.
Professor
You
X
could also
Gaming.
manually
We are
write out
about to
binary
attempt
zeros and
our
ones or
second
bytes
team
by hand.
shell
It's
level
not very efficient,
by
but technically
MadDentist.
you've
Team
stored
shells
computer
Mario
data. And while the
10
QR code is most
day
commonly
Snowfall.
used to store ASCII text, it can actually be made to store binary data as well, which pretty much means anything you can store on a computer you can store on a QR code, provided that it fits inside the size limitations. How limited are we? Well, QR codes come in various standardized sizes, but the largest is version 40, which gives us an absolutely leviathan 2,953 bytes. Yeah, slightly less than 3 kilobytes. It's not much. If you're curious just how not much, this sound from Windows 10, a sound that lasts for 1/15th of a second, this sound is 11 kilobytes. Yeah. Or remember floppy disks? The ones I remember are these, the 3.5-inch high-density floppies. Remember needing like 20 of them to install Windows 95? Well, those things are 1.44 megabytes, or 1,474,560 bytes, which means just one of those floppy disks can store not one, not two, but almost 500 version 40 QR codes worth of data. So, can we really fit a whole game into just one? Well, while pictures, music, video, and operating systems do take up a lot of storage space, simple code can actually be surprisingly economical. And while 3 kilobytes is pretty small even then, people have made games with far less. Going back to floppy disks, did you know that people have managed to fit games into a floppy disk's boot sector? And if you don't know how small that is, it's only 512 bytes, roughly a sixth of what we're dealing with QR codes. If you can fit a game into 512 bytes, you can fit a game into 3,000. Or look at the Atari 2600. A huge amount of those cartridges could only hold 4 kilobytes, so games had to fit into that or less. So, in theory, there's absolutely no reason we couldn't store a perfectly playable, if somewhat basic game onto a QR code. So let's do it. Our first decision is what game to write, and since this is just for science, we may as well implement something that already exists. My go-to simple game is Tetris. I love Tetris, but I've already talked about how litigious the Tetris company can be, and since I'd like to make this QR code available to the public, I ain't going near that. I'm gonna go for the game that anyone who had one of these will undoubtedly remember fondly. That's right, the one and only Snake. Extremely simple, but still just fun enough to fend off boredom in the pre-smartphone era. Our next decision is platform, and while it seems obvious to write a smartphone app, since that's what QR codes are usually used with nowadays, I have some doubts that I'll be able to make something within the size limitations on mobile. Additionally, the more locked-down nature of smartphones I think would make it a lot harder to get an executable to run from a QR code, which is probably a good thing now that I think about it. So, I'm just going to make this a Windows app instead, with the idea being that you could read the QR code from the computer's webcam, fitting an entire Windows executable into 2,900 and whatever bytes. Before we get to that though, I will mention a really easy way you could pull this off. You could just write it in HTML and JavaScript. In fact, just for demonstration, I did. This is Snake written in JavaScript, with some HTML and CSS to pull it together, of course. Once it's been minified, which basically means removing everything not strictly required, it fits snugly into our QR code size limit. You'll notice I was even able to fit some comfort features in, like writing extra code to draw the snake as long and thin rather
Fantastic
than
stage.
white squares or dots. Or queuing up button presses so that if you press buttons in quick succession, they'll still get recognized, and giving you one extra grace turn to move if you're just about to game over, just like the old phones used to do. So, technically, we're already sort of done. But it kind of feels like cheating, right? While it is actual